Hi, Tricia Morris here at Club Scrap with a stand-up card making workshop. And the reason we call this the stand-up card making workshop is because all the cards you make stand up. This is a beautiful compilation of several different types of card structures, and the neat part about this class is that once you've made these, they are wonderful prototypes so that you can continue to make similar cards using papers from your stash, which you likely have a stash. So I have a copy of the instructions and I have a score pal here. We are going to begin by just doing all the scoring in advance. So I've kind of gone ahead and figured out what needs to be done, and I'll help you identify the pieces that need to be scored. Let's begin with this square piece of blue paper. It's 9 by 9 inches, and the first thing we need to do is determine which way to score it. Now it's a square, so maybe you think it doesn't really matter, but it does. We want to score with the grain. So if I take the paper and try to squeeze it this way, and then I rotate it and try to squeeze this way, I'm getting a lot more resistance here. So here, less resistance. And that's the way I want to lay it into my score pal because I want to score with the grain. So that's what I'm doing right now, and I will score this at 3/4 of an inch, 2 3/4, 5 1/4, and 7 1/4. Now what we've done is the scoring for 4 mechanisms to make a tent card. So I'm just trying to help save time by doing things more efficiently. This was 4 score lines, but we've just made some prep work for 4 different cards. We'll set that aside. That's the only scoring needed for the first set. And now we need to take some red card panels. Now there are 2 sizes in your kit and you have to be very careful not to score the wrong size. Okay, there are 4 larger red panels, and you'll notice that one side is metallic and the other side is a matte finish. And then the smaller ones, those you keep set aside. So we are going to do some different types of scoring with this. With the matte side facing up, we will score at 1 1/4 and 6 3/4. Then flip the panel from the bottom up to the top and we'll score again at 2 1/2 and 5 1/2. So now the card will end up facing this way with the matte side up. Let's repeat that for the remaining 3 panels. Okay, that's all of the scoring that will be required for these red panels, so we will set those aside. Finally, we'll need our green panels. This is a deep green colored card base, and it will make a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card, which is standard. And we will score at 2 1/8. So this is when it's helpful to have the score pal that has 1/8 inch measurements. 6 1/8. Then flip the panel again bottom to top, and we'll score at 3 1/8 and 5 1/8. We'll repeat that for the remaining pieces. All right, I'll set that score pal aside, and next we need to do some trimming. I've got my trusty Fiskars guillotine trimmer here. It's a 12 by 12 base with a self-sharpening blade. And then I also have an accordion pocket file. This helps me stay organized. We're basically making 3 sets of cards, A, B, and C. I normally use these pockets for organizing my layouts, but I'm just gonna label them as 3 pockets in my mind, A, B, and C, 1 for each card set. Now the lip on the bottom of this pocket file just lives underneath the top of my trimmer base, and it holds it vertical so it's easy to file as we are working. So as we go, I'll just help you identify which papers go where, and we'll get those filed away. Let's begin perhaps with our cut aparts. And the reason we call them cut aparts is, of course, because we cut them apart. And you'll notice the tiny little registration marks on each piece. So the goal is to line up those registration marks with the edge of your trimmer blade and slice them into individual pieces of artwork. And my first cut lands at about 8 inches. And then I'll slide this down, and the next cut, when I line those registration marks with the edge of the blade, I'm at 7 inches. Next, 6 inches. Well, this is not too hard. And I'll continue down to create some strips that contain more smaller pieces of artwork. 3 3/4 and 2 3/4. I'm left with this strip of what feels like mermaid or nautical type images. I'll cut those into individual elements. And we are going to file anything to do with these nautical style cards. Those will go into the 3rd pocket, or the pocket for set C. And then these are the companion sentiments that go with those squares I just filed. So I'll trim those apart also. Pocket C. And now we have these soft, more feminine looking images, more of an Asian feel. Those go into pocket B. So I'll cut those apart. All of them pocket B. There are a few pieces that don't have any artwork on it. Those are scraps, and they're quite minuscule. Now you'll notice if you look carefully on these long skinny strips, there is a line. It's probably at the 5.5 inch mark. Yes, it is. I'm going to go right ahead and trim these into 4 long strips. And those will also go into pocket B. Now let's reach for our 2nd sheet of cut-aparts, and we'll tackle it the same way. Usually I study the cut-apart to find my route, my best cutting route that doesn't go through any artwork. So you just have to be careful and aware. And then we'll just rotate this. I like to trim the smallest pieces off the edge of the cut-apart first. And now you see some artwork here that is new. It's a bright, fun, cheerful style. And all 3 of these go into set A, so pocket A. Or if you're just making piles, that's fine too. This is applied to pocket B. Now we have one more strip of art. Make sure you get all of the pieces separated. Okay, now we have this cheerful piece also into pocket A, and then all the matching coordinating greetings or sentiments for those cards in that first set. And now we have 4 rectangles that just need to be trimmed. And those coincide with pocket B. All 4 of those, 2nd pocket A. Now we have all of these other miscellaneous panels. Let's get them organized. So this dark green is with that nautical or lagoon style set. That goes into pocket C, and when I file things in my accordion pocket file, I do so horizontally to avoid putting too much pressure on the file. Anything with this metallic-y red, so that'll be the smaller panels with the metallic side up, and then the ones we scored earlier with the matte side facing up, that goes into pocket 2. We have the yellow, and we have some bright blue panels. Those actually nest with each other. Those go into the 1st pocket. We've got some tan and aqua panels. All of those go into 3rd pocket, or pocket C. And finally, we have this yellow piece. This will actually be trimmed. In fact, we have a few things we need to trim that we may need to find. I totally forgot about that, so just bear with me. The yellow. Now, because our first set of cards will have a mat for the sentiment and the artwork, I chose to have it all start out as one piece that we trim. So we're going to take this 4 1/4 by 4 3/4 yellow panel, and we're going to trim it horizontally at 3.5 inches. That gives me one larger panel and one really tiny strip. Now if you like, if you're using this Fiskars trimmer, you can do both pieces at the same time. So horizontally at 3.5. And I'll just do this last one. Okay, all of that goes into pocket A. Then we need to find those long, unscored red panels, metallic side facing up. We're going to trim these into smaller panels as well. A whole bunch of cuts, actually. So let's just take 2 at a time if you feel comfortable. You don't have to, but we are going to make several cuts. The first one is at 5 3/4. Then slide it to 4 3/4, 3 3/4, and 2 3/4. So basically we just made one larger panel and then a whole bunch of little 1-inch strips. That goes back into the second pocket. We'll repeat that for the other two. 5 3/4, 4 3/4, 3 3/4, and 2 3/4. Alright, we'll stack all of these up and file them into pocket 2. Now from pocket 3 or your pocket C, whatever you want to call it, there are these aqua panels. We're going to split these in half, and you'll see why when we start making our cards. Right now, this is 4 inches wide. We're going to cut it in half. So vertically, I'm going to do 2 at a time, and I'm going to cut it vertically at 2 inches. And I'll take the other 2 and cut it vertically at 2 inches. Just a little prep work here. And then, remember this blue one that we scored? We're going to cut this into 4 equal size squares. So it doesn't really matter which way I put this piece into the trimmer now, because I'm going to cut it the same in both directions. To cut this in half, I need to cut it 4 1/2. 4 1/2. Then I'll just stack the 2 pieces I created, trim them horizontally again at 4 1/2. Okay, now I have 4 squares. Those go into pocket A. All right, I think everything's prepped. So the joy of this is we can move our trimmer out of the way and we can tackle our pockets one at a time. Now if you look at the instructions, I just want to point out that I was following the distribution map for each cut apart piece of artwork. So the corresponding letter for the card set is superimposed onto each piece of artwork. So there's really no guesswork here. Most of our collections don't have 3 themes, so this map is really important and helps you file things away by each card style. It just keeps things more organized. So I will look now at my first set of cards. This structure is called a tent card. So I'll take everything out of my first pocket, or just gather up your first pile. And you can see I have all these different elements here, and I'll just get a little organized. Got my larger sentiments, my smaller ones. I've got these skinny pieces. And these mats. And then this is actually going to be my card base and a nesting panel as well. You'll need your favorite adhesive for this, and I'm choosing to use an ATG or adhesive transfer gun. I like this because I never lose it on my work surface, and the adhesive is very strong. Okay, let's begin now to make the tent card structure. This is the mechanism that you scored earlier. You see there are 2 or 3 zones, let's say. Now this first zone is very narrow. It's a 3/4 of an inch scored area. And I'm going to fold this so that the bump of that score, or the raised area of the score, is on the inside of my fold. And I'll even do the same for the other one, just to make a gentle crease. Okay, this first little 3/4 inch flap, I'm going to apply adhesive to the inside of that flap. Then take the blue, it should be 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to center this other blue right on top. So it's centered left to right, and so the flap wraps around the long edge of this mat. Okay, that may not make any sense to you right now as to why we did that, but just do that. And then we'll take this piece, flip it to the back side, where you can see that 1 inch or that 3/4 inch tab, and I'm going to place that onto, nest it, centered, onto the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 yellow panel. Okay, now my card will start to take some shape here. Now I have some other things to pair up, so I'll just select, I hope your day is sunny, and then one of these yellow panels, and I'll nest them together. This is why it's nice to have adhesive that is efficient, because you'll do a lot of nesting, which is what I think makes a card look so pretty. And then the greeting for this, the sentiment is, "And just as beautiful as you are." We will nest this onto the corresponding little yellow strip. Everything's just getting put into place for final assembly now. Now this piece will nest beautifully onto that smaller blue area already attached to your card. The important thing is that we only apply adhesive to this outer scored area, not the center, because if we apply it to the center, the tent function of this card will not work. So I'm applying adhesive only to that flap, and then I will center this onto the flap. And that allows the card to function as we would like it to. Let me get an angle that you can see here. Okay. Now, what holds this tent in place? Well, it's the nested greeting for the inside. Let me grab my ruler here. To attach this, you can just eyeball the placement of the sentiment, that's fine. But I do like to have things centered, so I'm just going to use the 0 center of my grid ruler to find the center of my card base. That's going to be 2 3/4 inches on each side. And then I'll just choose to go up like 3/4 of an inch from the edge. And I hope with the light reflecting here you can see that. But the edge of the ruler, of course, is 0, and each solid line on the ruler represents 1/4 of an inch. So now I know I am exactly 3/4 of an inch from the bottom edge of the card, and my ruler is level and centered. So if I take the adhesive back, now I've added adhesive to this, and center this, I'm getting a reading of 2 1/8 on each side. Rest that piece up against the edge of the ruler, drop it down. I know I'm perfectly centered and level. Now, when the card is opened, the edge of the blue panel will rest upon the yellow panel, and it will sit up really in a pretty and unique way. So the fun part here is that all the prep work is done for the remaining 3 cards of this style. Each card is different in artwork and in sentiment, but the basic structure is the same. So I'm going to proceed by simply doing each step kind of like an assembly line. Like I know I can adhere all of my tabs and nest everything and then do final assembly on everything. Okay, so now I have my cards completed. I realized that I did switch the sentiments for the inside of the card. There should be on the other side. So just a word of caution to pay attention to that. And now I have 4 really beautiful and fun, cheerful tent cards, appropriate for any age group or any person you want to send a handmade card to. All right. Of course, in your kit, you'll find the envelopes for each of the cards as well. So a whole dozen envelopes. Now I'm moving on to set B. So I will take the contents of everything from this pocket. And this card structure is called a bridge card. I love this card structure. It's so much fun. And I just have a whole mess of little strips and little pieces here to deal with, but that's nothing to worry about. Now, if you look at the red side of the card base, the first thing I'm going to do, even before I fold anything, is attach the panels to each zone of the card. And to make this go very quickly, I'm going to put the adhesive on the card base itself. I'm avoiding the score lines and avoiding the perimeter because the panels are slightly smaller than the base. And what I love about this two-sided paper is that the contrast is automatically created by attaching the metallic side to the matte finish side. All right. And then I have one larger panel that should nest beautifully into the center. So you can see the efficiency here of doing it this way. And next we need to fold our card, of course, and we have these score lines. Now the first score line I see here is an indentation, and the bump of the score is on the other side. That's the way I want it. So that ridge becomes what I would call a mountain fold, and then I have a valley. Over here again I'm making a mountain fold and a valley. And now I have the makings of what I would call the bridge card. What holds that bridge together, what bridges the gap between these two pieces? It's this portion of the cut apart. Now, if I were to put adhesive on this entire cut apart, once I flatten the card will stay closed. So you have to be really aware of where you're putting adhesive on cards that have function, just like on the tent card we just made. So here's what I did. I just put adhesive on the ends, and if I just flatten this and then bring that fold in, I should be able to attach my bridge, and then when it opens, it sits like that. It's really a clever card structure. One of the things you're going to want to do before you attach that bridge, I got really excited about it, is you want to put the sentiment for the inside of the card in the center of the larger panel in the back. So it's kind of a hidden sentiment here. It says Happy Anniversary. And then for the front of it, we'll have a little rectangle, and it has this cherry blossom on it. Now, the cherry blossom is designed to sit sort of on this far right panel and on the bridge mechanism piece. And when I attached them, I made sure I only applied adhesive to the right and bottom edge. So just be really aware. So with the card flat, I'll stick this down, but I don't have any adhesive in this left corner. And now that will stay. It's really cool the way this works. Then you have everything you need. Once again, you have your little assembly map, and your instructions tell you everything that gets included, like what it says in the inside, and then a picture of each completed card as well as those step-by-step instructions. So I'm going to go ahead and put my panels in place, add my artwork, and finish up these cards. Nice. Okay, I have 4 beautiful bridge cards, very feminine, good for, well, in this case we made an anniversary, we made a get well, a sympathy, and a thank you. All right, now for the third and final set of 4 cards, we're switching gears again and revisiting a wonderful collection designed by Club Scrap called Lagoon. And I love the colors and the flavor of this card set, and also the structure itself, which is basically a stand-up card. We have scored these panels so that they'll fold properly. And we're going to start, though, by attaching our aqua panels to the outside of our stand-up cards. So what I want you to do is position the card so that the bump of the score is on the outside score lines. So this is the bump, and this is a little ridge. And that way, when it's just easiest to attach these panels when the card is flat. Gives you a very, very narrow little margin. Your cutting of the aqua panels went well. Everything should line up just perfectly. Then we can go ahead and fold. The outer 2 folds become valleys, and then the inner 2 become mountains. And so when the card is flat and being mailed, it looks like this. When it comes out of the envelope, it stands up like this. And thus we call it the stand-up card. Well, let's put a little message on our card, shall we? We've got these sweet little tan panels, and we have our square greetings. We'll go with the happy birthday, and then there's a little sentiment that coincides with it that reads, tomorrow the tales will be told. So if I put adhesive on the back of this square and I center it on the upper portion of this tan panel with equal spacing at the left and the right and the top, it should be perfectly positioned to then become a mate with this sentiment. Because this card really doesn't have an inside, I mean, it's just it's one side. I mean, it has the back side too, where you can sign it if you wish. Once again, you have to be completely aware of adhesive application. If you just run 2 strips along the back here, flatten the card, it's going to be a one-dimensional postcard. So you have to be sure to apply adhesive vertically down the center of that panel. And then I like to attach this to the card base. You can center it if you like, and you'll notice the reveal is the same on all sides. You can attach it a little bit upper. Let's just go ahead and center this one. I mean, it looks so nice. So I did my, what I call a dry fit. I can kind of approximate where my adhesive needs to go. Just stay away from those outside edges. And I'm flattening the card while attaching my panel. If you want, you can use your grid ruler to help make it ensure that it's exactly centered. That is a nice looking stand-up card. Okay, I have 3 more to make. Let's crank those out. So perhaps you've noticed that I've saved a lot of time by doing similar tasks in groups. So I might have, put adhesive on all of the aqua panels at the same time and then applied them all. Then I folded them all. I added the greetings to the panels all in a row. And as long as you're paying attention, these cards are going to come together beautifully. Notice that we used a minimal amount of supplies. We used adhesive, a trimmer, and a score pal. Those 3 things, plus this card kit, and we've got a dozen beautiful cards with unique structures. So now that you've learned how to make the bridge card, the stand-up card, and the tent card, you can go into your stash of paper at home, follow along with the instructions, which give you the measurements of every single panel that you'll need, and you'll be able to create more cards, and all you need to provide is the artwork. This is a membership that we have at Club Scrap. It's our monthly card kit, and it's a wonderful value, so don't miss out on the opportunity to make beautiful cards from Club Scrap every month.